Hi, this is Ed, and I'm here in San Diego. And today is 17 February, the year 2025, and it's just coming up to 8 a.m. here. The sun is breaking through the fog here in Seaport Village, downtown San Diego, about 8 miles north of the Mexican Baja border. And we're about 150 miles south of Beverly Hills, LA, California. And about 600 miles or so south of San Francisco. Our very special guest today is Angie Weinberger, and she's going to be joining us momentarily from Zurich, Switzerland. Wonderful place. Been there many times, produced meetings there, and hope to again one day. We're going to be talking about the dual career dilemma. So we'll be right back with Angie. Thank you. And we're recording. And let's welcome Angie Weinberger. And is the correct pronouncement of your last name Weinberger or Weinberg?
Weinberger.
Well, see, that's
But
I,
honestly, I'm used to all sorts of pronunciations. I had a friend from New Zealand, and she thought it was Weinberger,
yeah,
as in the drink and the type of food. I thought that's actually cool because I like both together.
that's right. All right, cool. So about the dual career dilemma, this is like an old story, isn't it? And it's still there. And because it's not being done right. And that's why it's a, well, that's why you have a product, number one, but it is a pain. And our good friend Yvonne Qua wrote that book, Whose Career Is It? Yours, mine, or ours? And Permits Foundation has been at this, which means very, very smart people from
Mhm.
across oceans and borders, cultures have gotten companies to lobby government people to open up and make changes, and it's still difficult. So let me ask you just a question before we do a deep dive, because I was looking at your talking points, and thank you very much for the detailed work here. Adaptation, cultural immersion.
Mhm.
So when Europeans in particular, and I guess Asians also, Latinos, anyone who's not an American, always goes to YouTube, tunes in the old TV comedy shows or Friends or whatever show. And that's how they learn to be familiar with American behavior. So are there any TV shows like that available to share with expats in advance of them arriving, so that they can adapt to life in a comfortable, even fun environment, just to see how people live in Zurich?
That is an interesting question, and I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer this because I'm watching all the American big series you can think about. Um, what I find quite helpful, if you think about something, to get the culture of Switzerland or Germany, is to check Instagram. There are some really funny like clips, short clips about, for example, dating in Germany or building trust in Switzerland or how to make a friend in Switzerland. And it's always a little bit exaggerated, or, the differences between Swiss German and High German. It's always a little bit over the top, but because it's a bit over the top, it's also really funny. So if people are looking for that kind of like humorous approach to cultural differences, I would recommend to check out Instagram.
There you go, people.
Comedians. Yeah, yeah.
Pardon me.
Um, one of the things, that I find interesting, even after having been in this field and working on expat and expat spouse experience for a long time, that nowadays, the majority of couples, so it says here 81% of women are in a dual career couple. So, I mean, the majority of couples are now dual career couples. Whereas maybe when we discussed this 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it wasn't the majority. It was maybe 20% or 10% dual career couples. And what I also find really interesting is something that I did not read anywhere, but I experience now, for example, a lot of couples from countries where you wouldn't expect it, like India, that the trailing spouse is the man, and that the man supports the woman to have a career, and they're trailing along. So I have a lot of male clients now that are expat spouses. And sometimes we even switch. I first coach the wife and then I coach the husband. So that is a bit new in the development at my end.
So I need to ask a couple of questions, okay?
Go
And
ahead.
and if you want to redirect me, it's okay.
I just want to give a bit of an intro.
Yeah, okay. So who pays you? The spouse or the company?
Yeah, that's also an excellent question. And like almost a lawyer, I would say it depends. I don't really care.
Right,
As
right.
long as someone pays me, they also pay the same price. Yeah, so
Okay.
the service is the same price, whether it's bought by a private individual or a company. And sometimes, that one of the trends in global mobility that I'm not a particular fan of is the lump sum model. So some companies, they pay a lump sum for someone who's coming on an international assignment to help with spousal support. And then the assignee is free to choose what they want. And then they probably buy a new TV set so they can watch more Netflix series. Yeah. And they don't get spousal support. Whereas for the international hires, which is the bigger trend as well, not the international signees, for the international hires, it is often an optional element, but not very often offered proactively. So sometimes what happens now is people contact me, they find me on Facebook, on the internet. Then we find out if the partner's company would actually be willing to support expats partners career support, and then we send a proposal to the company. So it's a bit backwards, but
Hmm.
because most policies are not so inclusive, and one of the things that I'm also always talking about in my lectures is I think it's better if we give people a choice of services, like a box of chocolates where they can pick the chocolate, but we're not giving them money, cash that they can spend on anything. But that's my personal opinion on this topic.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking at the notes, and number 9 is box of chocolates
Yeah.
as an approach in the international hiring guidelines. What does that mean?
Yeah. So, maybe you've heard of core flex models. And Mercer also had last year, they coined a term called care flex. And it goes in the same direction. Yeah. So if we want to care more for our international hires, transfers, and our international assignees, one of the ideas could be that we just we devise an overall budget for the move. And then we say within this budget, these are the kind of chocolates that you can pick. You pick the chocolates that are suitable and aligned with your family situation and what you need. For example, if you don't have children, but you have a dog, maybe you want us to pay for the transfer and vaccination of your doggy. Yeah. So, we're getting a bit more open in how we offer it. That's the whole idea. But we still have a budget so that the business can plan. and the business can also decide what makes sense for them or not.
So give me, I mean, just staying on this theme for a minute here and going off the rail a little bit, off the wall even. Um, let's just say it's a gooey middle of the chocolate rather than a solid piece of chocolate. Okay, so give me an example of a service, an offering, a guidance of a GUI versus a solid.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, as you know, my business, Global People Transitions, we started because there is this big career gap in global mobility for the expats and the expat spouse and the expat family. So that it's the raison d'etre of my company, yeah, that this is what we do. So now, we have a portfolio of offerings that fit sort of every budget. We have something that is like an online program of Hire Me Express, which, just in comparison to what normal spousal career support costs is ridiculously low. It's less than $200. So you get a 12-week
for
online program, a 12-week online program where I'm supporting in the background on chat, not a robot, for less than $200. At the same time, if you book a single coaching session with me, it could be more than $200. Does make sense? And then we have an annual package, which, would be like, okay, very intense for maybe senior leaders, senior managers. They, want to change something. They want to build a global team, or they want to transition into a new role. And this very senior like program or program for senior managers would then have like an annual license with an annual price. So basically, we can adhere to several needs here and use technology to do that.
I'm going to continue in my off the wall approach here before we get into some strict detail.
Yeah, go ahead.
To what extent does the following occur? An expat is hired, all right, and they come into a Zurich-based company.
Yeah.
Excuse me. How are they introduced to the co-workers? Does does that person, the transferee, the new employee in the group setting, how are they indoctrinated? Are
Mhm.
they welcomed? Or are they threatened?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I have to tell you, Swiss companies are amazing at onboarding. They have perfectionist attitudes to everything, but they're also really good at onboarding. So usually, what you get a buddy, somebody, to guide you to answer questions. You get like an onboarding plan. There's certain people that you're going to meet so that, you understand more details on certain topics. And this can go between like, a week to 2 months. So depending on seniority, it could be a very detailed onboarding program, but that's obviously just for the employee, not for the spouse. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Is the spouse invited to?
um, well, sometimes what we did when I was still working in the corporate world, we would have events and we would invite the spouses along. We would also invite the spouses to our intercultural training sessions. And I think that was quite progressive 15 years ago. And then we would conduct specific events like career clinics or, resume clinics, or, give them an intro on how to network properly in Switzerland just for the spouses. But this is not done very often. So I think, it was a project we did together with ETH back in the day, because there was actually nothing, spouses could do. Now there is also like a lot more. We have, for example, in Switzerland, and that's a global network, that's the International Dual Career Network. There are spouse networks of companies. So, there is a lot more than there was when I moved to Switzerland initially.
Do you get paid to take a spouse, or maybe it's two or three spouses, uh, to uh, a tour, a museum, walk around. In other words, be friendly, but have a
I don't do
structure.
that. No, sorry. This is relocation. I don't do that. I
Yeah.
really focus on careers. Yeah.
Yeah. Not acculturation and not social, or
No,
immersion, if you will.
I mean, you know, what you could get from my company would be an intercultural awareness training, but it's actually not sought very often right now. And that would be like a training session. Usually in the past, we would go to the house of the couple and, you know, give them some understanding of cultural differences, protocol, working in Switzerland, living in Switzerland, but it's not really bought a lot anymore. So I think, you know, we also moved to coaching as an approach because companies don't want their employees to sit in a training all day anymore. And, you know, the whole training, like the whole learning and development has, you know, gone more to this self-service approach where you get something when you need it. So, you know, we're also adapting a bit more to that kind of style. But obviously, you know, using also technology to do that and digital programs. I wanted to say that, you know, even in 2022, the Permits Foundation has found out that 90% of partners going on international assignments were employed before the relocation and less than half secured employment afterward. And, you know, it's also a shame to think about all this wasted potential that we have in global mobility, which is something, you know, I also find like, it's just a shame. You know, it would be better if we were able to use the potential of these couples more in the job market that we're in. Yeah, so what does it need so that couples are more prepared to go into a job market like Zurich? It's, for example, one very well-known pharmaceutical company used to offer pre-hire assessments. Hardly anyone does that. Do you know what that is?
No,
So
I could guess, but I might be wrong.
I'm happy to explain it. So, you know, it's so when they were in discussions, let's say, you know, with a senior researcher, female or male, they would bring me in to look at the resume and have a conversation with the spouse, whatever their background was, and then tell them what their chances are in the job market and what they could already do before their partner has signed the contract, what they could already do to prepare for finding a job here. This was an excellent service, but unfortunately, nobody knows about this. Yeah, so especially another thing, you know, Ed, that we just need to keep in mind, we're very often here talking about international hires and international transfers that go into these bigger expat hubs. Berlin, Amsterdam, Zurich, New York City, London. And who's dealing with them? Global mobility? Not really. It's a recruiter or an HR, local HR manager, local HR business partner. So they're not aware of the things that we normally do in global mobility. And, you know, that's why also we need to continue to explain things to them and make them understand, you know, the kind of offerings we have developed in global mobility so we can adhere, for example, to the needs of expat families and couples. So it's a constant, you know, I still have a feeling we're constantly explaining why this is beneficial, why there is a business case for it, despite all the research that it is actually really beneficial. I'm sure you remember the discussion we had with Heather maybe a year ago when she told us about her research, quality on the move, peace of mind on the move, it was called, where they really proved with very good data that that career coaching positively influenced the assignment experience, that the psychological contract breaches were reduced, that people trusted their employer more because they said, oh, my employer is actually taking care also of my spouse. This is helpful. So despite all of this research, you know, we're still justifying why we need to do this. Yeah. So I still get the response from HR, Why? This is a personal matter what they're doing with their partners. Why should I care?
So let's talk about your point number 8. Mindset and career resilience empower the spouse with career coaching, personal branding, and job search strategies to confidently navigate transitions. That's exactly what you were just doing,
Yeah.
right? So what about this networking thing? Be prepared. I think it was 3 Ps you mentioned.
They it's the 3 Fs and the 4 Ps.
Yeah, okay.
Uh, yeah, so these are
So, yeah, tell us about what,
okay. Let,
4 Fs? No, 3 Fs and four
so
Ps.
let me explain the ideas behind making things simple. So the 4 Ps of networking: purpose, preparation, presence, and promises. This was something I came up years ago in a workshop for migrants. I think it was to help them step by step, when they wanted to develop a business of their own, to think about, okay, how can I approach networking even if I'm maybe a bit introverted or shy, inhibited. I very often encounter clients who say, I don't do networking. I don't like it. It's sleazy. It's weird. So, we're giving them a strategy to do that. So to think about, first of all, why that. So, what is the purpose of networking? Then the the preparation. What do I need for a networking event that it's successful? Whatever kind of event it is, small group, one-on-one, bigger group, how can I prepare so that I have a successful networking experience? Then presence. When I'm there, how can I make sure that I'm actually actively listening to the other person and not just talking about myself, which is what I'm doing right now, but I guess it's an interview, so that's okay. But when you're like in a networking situation, sometimes you find out so much more interesting things about the other person when you listen to them a little bit and ask good questions. Then you can also find, maybe things you have in common or struggles you both have, where you could support each other, where you could, build a real connection with someone. And then the last one is promises, and that's mainly a tactic. So I learned that, 30 years ago at my first networking seminar, is that you always think about something you can promise to the other person so you have a reason to contact them again. Because, it's what very often happens. I'm sure you know this from networking events. You get like 10 business cards or, LinkedIn profiles. Then they contact you. Hey, Ed, was great to meet you. And you're like, yeah, it was great to meet you. And then that's it. You never hear from each other again. Yeah. But if I promised you, like I was just talking about the fondant wine, yeah, so I'm going to send you afterwards, I'm going to send you a few infos on the fondant wine. So if you ever come across that wine, you buy it, you taste it, and you let me know how it went. We have a reason to talk about wine when we meet each other again. Or when I know that you come to Zurich, I can say, oh, Ed, I remember cheese fondue and wine. Let's go. Yeah. So, it makes more like it builds a friendship more or less
It's
if you
human.
more about these kind of promises that you make to each other. Yeah,
Yeah, human. Yeah.
human. But yeah, Ed, I don't know if you noticed, but with all the like AI content and all this weird machinery that we're confronted with now all the time, even on LinkedIn chat, it's like you have a feeling you don't communicate with a human being anymore. And that's such a shame. So, like that everybody is looking for connection and nobody's giving connection. Like the business world feels very technological and very stiff right now. Yeah.
To what extent, is psychological safety involved? Never mind personal safety.
Um, that's a little bit of a bigger question. Okay. First of all, psychological safety, is a concept that has to do with how safe do I feel in a team to speak up and say my opinion. And does everybody else expect me to speak up in a team setting? In a coaching setting, it has to be there. It's not even a question. Like, if I cannot provide psychological safety to my client, there will be no trust. So, there's a few things that as coaches we have to do. We have ethical standards we have to adhere to. We have to ensure confidentiality, for example. So, for example, for our app, we make sure that everything is confidential, that only I have access to the data of the client, or if the client writes something to me, that only I can read it, not the rest of my team. So, there's certain safety measures we have to implement as coaches. Otherwise, it's like, when you go to therapist, if people can't open up to you, there's no point in coaching. Now, the other thing you said about this personal safety depends, obviously, again, on the location. And this would now be a whole other angle of topic, like that we maybe could pick up in another one-on-one, how, we ensure care for our employees. And, one of the care aspects of that would be how we make sure that they're safe, especially in dangerous location and in high-risk locations. But as you know, right now, every location has dangers. You could be in Munich and you could be at a demonstration and somebody is driving into you. So it's not only the dangerous locations we have to take into consideration, basically. Did I understand your question correctly?
Yeah, and you know what? Whatever you have said in its totality is going to be meaningful to the people to whom I will be sending this recorded program to, HR business partners in particular, and everybody along the stakeholder chain. And that's what's driving me as a happy TV talk show host to do what I do. Let's talk about resilience. Resilience is part of a fear factor, in my view. People have fear when they may not show it. They may wear a smile. They may display some form of practice acting mask of comfort in what could be a very aggressive, dangerous situation. Meaning, like, let's just say that my life partner, spouse, is a lady, and she is the employee, and I'm the trailing spouse partner. Okay. People are going to be looking at me. Do they like my hair? Is it too long for some people's taste? Do they like my color lavender shirt here? I wore this because I thought I was, you were going to wear purple or be on
I do.
the red couch. Yeah, see that we saw it. We mesh. So let's shake hands across the seas. There we go. So thank you for blending,
Your
meshing
hair.
my hair.
Your hair was the question. And
Yeah.
personal, let's say, insecurities, that obviously come up a lot. You and I talked about this maybe 2 years ago. There's one of my favorite videos with you. It's about the 3 I's. And, we're talking about the identity shift and issue that happens to expat partners when they lose their job.
What are the 3 I's?
It was isolation, identity, and the third I don't remember right now.
Yeah.
But it's
Instability.
the
Instability.
the resilience that is needed to sort of, and I have a lot of these clients in my first initial calls, to build up your self-confidence self-confidence after you've been on LinkedIn and applied to 100 jobs
Yeah.
and never even get invited, that requires a lot of support. Because people often don't understand the job market. They never had to find a job. They always had a job, or they never had to find one because jobs came to them. I remember I never had to find a job. It always like either I met someone or, somebody headhunted me. I don't know. I didn't know how hard it is to look for a job until I started working with my clients. Yeah, because, it is quite a big loss of your identity that you're going through. That's one thing. You don't really know who you are anymore, especially if you have been a career person before. But then the other thing is this whole like constant rejection, and done by tools and very junior people who do not really appreciate and understand who you are professionally. That has a very negative effect on it, on resilience. Yeah. So, and self-worth. And then, we have to build up people again, first of all.
Okay, so now from a counselor point of view, um, going through that experience that you've just enumerated, that is a direct pathway towards a strife at home,
Yeah.
a speedway, not
Yeah.
just a pathway.
Yeah.
And definitely that's going to impact the employee's performance and comfort zone
Absolutely.
and creativity and productivity and everybody else's itty. So do bosses understand that? Do they have a clue
I
what's really
think,
going on?
I tell you who understands it. Expats. Managers who've been abroad themselves and who've been through the experience with their spouse or partner and who saw what it did to them, they understand that. Problem is, many younger professionals, especially in human resources, they have never been through an international experience. They don't know how that works. And that's why they cannot relate to it. And also, if you've always had a job, you don't understand how hard it is. So even the expat themselves, because they come here with a job or the international hire, they don't know how hard it is to find a job here. So, one of the things I always tell my expat spouses when they start a program with me is tell your partner to back off. Yeah. Let us work on this topic, but tell them to back off. Tell them to, have a glass of wine ready for you at the end of the week, but not to get involved in your job search because they don't understand how hard it is because they already have a job. So, there's a lot of subtle things that are going on, and obviously they all have an influence on the relationship. So, if we help more spouses get into employment fast, I think we're going to secure a lot more marriages of international couples and dual career couples. And B, we're going to increase the satisfaction of the assignee themselves or the expat or the hire, because they won't be bothered about their partner because everybody's happy. So that's always been my approach, to say we need to strengthen the family system on both ends if we want to have a good and satisfactory expat experience.
So what about when there's, say, a teenager?
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the
Next topic.
most of the transferees, they're in their 30s or 40s,
Uh-huh.
and they're going to probably have a teenager or somebody who's 11 or 12, uh,
Yeah.
or 10, if not 13 or 14. And that's a powder keg waiting to explode inside the house.
That is true. So one of the things, I think is important to explain is the teenager will be integrated in a school structure. Schools know how to handle these topics, especially here in expat hubs. They know how to handle these topics because they've been confronted with it. And then it could be that everybody in the family goes through cultural adjustment at a different pace. Plus, there's puberty, which is a challenge in a home country already. So, yes, counseling, intercultural training, support from the school, all that is required. But I think a teenager will also pick it up if their dad or their mom is happy. And again, or their moms or their dads in a same-sex couple. So if the parental structure is safe and happy and secure, the children will also feel more secure. That's why I think, the spouse is the essential element in this topic.
So what about working, and I'm talking about the spouse now, or the partner.
Yeah.
Why don't they just work remotely? Who's going to know?
I don't tell that to a Big Four. Yeah, so good point, Ed. Thank you for raising. I don't know if you noticed, but I changed the title of my masterclass from finding a job to finding work. Because at the end of the day, what is important to the spouse is to find paid work. And it could be a remote job. It could be freelancing. It could be starting their own business. But what I don't want is that everybody's just volunteering. See, I want more people get into paid work.
Yeah.
But it could be a portfolio career. And now, we have more remote opportunities than we had 10 years ago. So yes, it's an option. It's an option with the caveat of corporate tax rules and all of these issues that come with it. But even for that, then now these payroll companies, employer of records, so there are solutions for that.
Thank you very much. Okay, this is really fascinating. Now, the audience for this recording, excuse me, the audience for this recording, just to review for the audience out there who will be watching this, and is mainly corporate.
Yep.
And company people who are not corporate but are served like we will serve the corporate interests as a business.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who get involved. But it's the line manager. I don't know what else to call this person, the corporate employed line manager.
Yeah. Yeah.
A direct boss. Is the word boss bad?
A line manager is perfect.
Yeah, okay, line manager. And that means there's a direct report. Okay. And a lot has to do with how that relationship works.
Yeah.
So what training does the line manager get to deal with an expat or an international hire? And please define the difference between an international hire and an expat, if there is a difference.
Okay. I start with the easy part. International hire, somebody.
How much time do you want to spend on this question?
International hire is somebody who's hired from abroad into a role, for example, in the US or in Zurich, on a local contract.
On a what contract?
Local contract.
Local
like
contract.
You
Okay.
and me would get the same contract. If you were hired from the US here on a local contract, then you're an international hire. An expat, under the global mobility terminology, an international assignee, long-term assignee, short-term assignee. These are usually people where the assumption is that they return to their home company. So, you work for a US company, you get assigned to Switzerland for 3 years, and then you return to the US. That's the biggest difference. And an assignee, international assignee, usually has an assignment letter, an assignment contract, and a dormant working relationship with the home company. So they can return to the home company after the end of the assignment. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
And the line manager training. I don't think they get training. However, I think there's a lot of experience around. So I think, if I was a line manager and I had a feeling I'm not sure how to integrate people who come here from other countries, or I'm not inclusive enough, I don't really know how to handle a diverse team, or I don't know how to handle an international team, you know what I would say? Contact Angie Weinberger, because she has a program for that called the Global Rock Stars. There's a different set of my coaching. It's for exactly those kind of leaders. But that's where we also work. We have a program built on my book, The Global Rockstar Album, for leaders to be more inclusive leaders. And onboarding team members with a diverse background is obviously a part of inclusion.
So do you happen to have that book handy that you could hold up to the camera?
I have. Here it is.
That's so
My
describe
notes.
describe what we're looking at. Is that the world that's being held up from below?
This
Yeah, that's the world. Okay. And is there
that's not the
somebody
world.
oh, that's somebody
Um,
holding up underneath?
that's a band. It's a rock band.
Ah, okay,
Yeah,
great.
a diverse rock band. The idea behind the round shape was, in the 70s, we had this like dishwashing liquid, and they had always these little flowers. Maybe you had the same in the US. It just gives this 70s vibe or 80s vibe. And the band is it's a diverse background, and the whole book is a little bit alluded to how to build a team. And it's similar to, how you build a band and how you get a band together. So the language is from music.
So there's only one drummer and one piano player.
At this stage, yeah, small band. You can also get a bigger band, or orchestra together.
Wow. So this is fun. Okay, so let's talk about progressive number 5, progressive global mobility policies, moving beyond lump sums. We've
Yeah.
addressed that. Offer structured career support programs, such as expat spouse career coaching and entrepreneurship guidance. You touched on that. And support programs such as Global Rockstars and the Hire Me Express. Now, the Hire Me Express, that's specifically about spouse partner and work, paid work.
Yeah, and finding a job or finding paid work. Exactly, yeah.
Now, uh, do I need a work permit if I'm going to move to Zurich?
You do.
And how do I
And
get that? In advance?
and that
Before
is
I land at the airport, or?
and that is the challenge, that, first of all, every country has different rules. Within Europe, there are more efforts now, to bring in more tech people, for example, through the blue card scheme, the EU blue card scheme. Switzerland is not in the EU, so it's slightly different. It has their own rules, and it's the employer's job to organize the work permit here. Meaning, that first of all, you have to land a job before you can come here as what we call a third country national. Third country is everything outside the EU and outside of Switzerland or the EFTA states. So for you as an American, you would qualify as third country. It doesn't mean third world country. It just means the third ring, basically. So, and that is also something, that is different for immigration countries like Canada, for example. They have a different system of immigration. For us, you first of all have to identify and get the job. And then the employer is responsible for making sure that you get the permit. And work permit is also an issue for spouses, because sometimes we have here permits that do not allow the spouse to work. And this is a global issue. It's not just a Swiss issue. So also important for the research and for the policies. When we address HR leaders, one of the requests I would have in the more progressive and inclusive global mobility policies to ensure that the partner gets supported with immigration, whether it's a married spouse, unmarried, same-sex couple, whoever is the partner, that they get the support they need to also be able to work in that host country, if legally possible. So that would be a sign of, a more progressive and inclusive global mobility policy. Also, how you define the partner, how open you are to defining the partner.
Let's talk about point number 4, networking. We've already touched on this a little bit. Networking and professional integration, facilitating access to local professional networks, industry events, and expat communities to unlock hidden job markets. So we're talking about either the employee who's been hired and I've been relocated, or I'm the partner spouse of that person. But I don't have a work permit, so I can't legally talk or just do it. Am I a foreigner? I'm a foreigner. Am I shunned because I don't have a work permit? I don't. I'm trying to
So
understand what
it
my
depends.
status would be.
Now it depends on the country and the system. To my knowledge, outside of Switzerland in the EU, it is the same. Once one of the couple goes to gets the permit to work, there is a process for the other partner to also get a permit, at least a residence permit. So, for example, if we have my couple from India that I talked about earlier, one of them has a job, so they come here, they get, first of all, what we call an L permit. And the L permit allows the international hire to work, but it doesn't allow the partner to work, but the partner can reside in Switzerland. So at least they can start to build their network while they're on this L permit. They can start to, look at the hidden job market. They can start to do an additional master program, for example, or, volunteer for a limited period of time. We're in the process of changing that, especially for Indian nationals, but it's still a little bit annoying that they have to wait sometimes for 2 years until they can work here. It's not a little bit, it's really annoying. So,
Interesting.
so that is the process, for many couples. And then there's another category of permit where they can immediately work. So most of the people that I work with, they have the permission to work. However, they struggle finding a job because they don't understand exactly how the market works and rely too much on LinkedIn and, applying to jobs on LinkedIn.
Interesting. This is almost exhausting, but it's actually really interesting stuff to think about. So you like your job.
I love my job.
And so what are you doing tonight? It's almost 6 o'clock there.
Yeah, I wasn't kidding about the cheese fondue earlier. It's one of my best friend's birthday, and we're going to a restaurant in the neighborhood. And we were planning to have fondue, like good Swiss people. I'm still not Swiss. I'm still waiting for the passport, but I'm behaving like one now.
And you've been there a long time.
Yeah, 16 years.
Yeah.
And also, I basically was born at the border to Switzerland. So
Yeah.
I should have been naturalized already earlier.
So is that like a baptism? I mean, what is what is that? What happens? One day you become boom. Um, I'm
You
ready.
know, I think once you know exactly how to eat the cheese fondue, they give you.
And somebody recognizes it, right? On
So
the side.
let me know when you come here. Seriously, I need to take you to that restaurant, you and your wife, because it's very Swiss. It's very Swiss.
Okay, talk to me about the Master Class 2025, finding a job through relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if people still want to join the masterclass because we told them almost everything already in here. However, it's a good chance to see me talk about this again in a bit more structured way, so that it can help an expat or an expat spouse looking for a job or looking for paid work in an expat hub, mainly in Europe, with some of the methods we already mentioned. So we'll talk about the current job market, maybe a little bit about the geopolitical situation, the circle of trust, what it means, if you're suddenly part of the out group when you're used to being part of the in group. Then the 4P method that I already explained, the 3 Fs, friends, fame, and fortune. And then I will also train them 2 methods that they can use to build their network faster.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about blind dates. I've been with Joanne 28 years, so I forget. What's a professional blind date?
Yeah, it's not exactly the same as like a personal blind date. I always tell my clients, to challenge themselves a little bit and meet a new person every week. Because this experience is helpful, also inside a company. So I'm also telling that to all my coaching clients that work inside companies. It's helpful, to get things done if you build more personal relationships. And then also you get access to the hidden job market if more people know you in person. The hidden job market are all the jobs that we don't know about because they're not appearing on LinkedIn. And there are a lot, at least here, 80%.
This is really interesting. And so I think that would be really interesting. So do you have a lot of clients, viewers? Um, it's all Zoom. I know that. So you're opening it up for international.
Yeah. Yeah. We already know that we will have participants from the US. So we're gonna have it around lunchtime in Europe. So that's your early morning. The masterclass and the online Hire Me Express program is anyway an online digital program, so you can do that at your own time. But it's going to be a weekly feed, so every week you get a new chapter, a new module to work on, with a video where I explain a concept, and then you have to apply it, and you get a little challenge like, oh, now meet 5 more people. And then I wanted to say also, if your viewers are HR leaders or recruiters, or work in an adjacent field to global mobility, or even in global mobility, in addition to that master class, I will also be holding a webinar with the Expertise Academy, which is really big in global mobility training and education, on filling the career gap in global mobility through expat coaching. And then, we will also talk a bit more about strategies. So like how to make your guidelines more inclusive, your hiring guidelines, for example. So it will be a bit more strategic, more directed towards HR professionals. If you have people who are listening now and don't know how to find out more about this, they can all contact me on LinkedIn, obviously.
And so tell me about the fee,
For
that expertise.
the masterclass, expertise, I think, is free. As far as I'm informed, it's free. But the masterclass will be 97 euros all in. And the Heim Express program will be 180 euros all in, as I said already. So if people want to buy both together, they should let me know.
So this is really interesting. And I thank you for being a global mobility Yoda. I think that's great. Yoda,
And
Yoda, Yoda, and it's a little gremlin guy. Is it a
yeah,
guy? Yeah, probably a guy. And very wrinkled. I mean, so that means that Yoda is like 1,000 years old of wisdom.
yeah. And the reason why I sometimes think of myself as Yoda is that sometimes people don't understand me. Like, I talk in circles, or I don't know. I I might see things or very clearly, but they're not so clear for other people. So,
Yeah,
and
well,
also, I've been in this field for too long, so I feel like a Yoda now.
this is really an interesting topic, and someday we'll get into this offline, but it's why wouldn't people understand you? I think you speak very, very clear, and without going off on tangents, it's just a straight line.
Maybe it's cultural.
Cultural. Oh, wow. This has
Yeah.
been uh, a tour de force, and so merci beaucoup. Thanks for being on.
Small mini lecture on dual career couples in club mobility.
Yeah. Wow. Will this problem ever go away? I don't
I
know.
think so. Now I think we're going to see a lot more positive. I'm very optimistic this year when it comes to that topic. I feel like HR professionals, recruiters, line managers, they're getting it. So yeah, I think we're going to see more positive news on this topic,
Great.
which we desperately need, to be honest.
Okay, we've been talking, as you know already, with Angela Weinberger, Managing Director of Global People Transitions in Zurich, Switzerland. And it's Angela at globalpeopletransitions.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. It was great to
Enjoy,
talk to you.
enjoy your fondue and the wine.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.